Thank you, Robert. And first thing I want to do is I want to thank all of you for taking all of this time out of your Friday night. If it was my Friday night alone, I might choose to do some other activities. So for you, I respect that this is a great sacrifice, and I greatly appreciate it. I also want to give my thanks to all of the people that have volunteered to help out, and especially Robert and Glenn Brake. And all these other speakers here that have come to give their word of advice and thought about governance and what's going on in our society. My name is David McDevitt, and I'm running for United States Congress to replace Jamie, because I believe that Jamie is not doing as good of a job as she could be representing all of us. My mother's 85 years old. She lives in my house because Social Security is not enough. And so I'm interested in doing a number of things, but before I get into talking about some of the positions I have and some of the things I think about and what my values are, I want to give you some idea about who I am as an individual. I was born in the late 50s. My parents were about 25 at the time I was born. They were from a different generation, probably a generation that many of you are from. My father was gay, but he got married and had children anyway, because that's what you had to do if you wanted to have a job in corporate America. He had 3 of us, and I'm the oldest. My first youngest sister died in 1995 of AIDS, so I'm pretty tightly connected with what that struggle is about. When I was 11 years old, my father died. It was an accidental death. He made his career in sales, high-level corporate sales, where drinking alcohol and taking drugs was probably something that was expected. And he didn't overdose, but he asphyxiated. So having lost my father at that time was a huge influence to me, and from that point we survived because of Social Security survivors' benefits. If it wasn't for that, I'm not sure that I ever would have been able to go to college. I'm not sure that I would have been able to achieve a law degree or a license to practice law. When I turned 17 and a half, I graduated from high school. And I went to college right away for 6 months. And during that summer, when I turned 18, I decided I needed to do my service for our country. I joined the military, and I did my 6 years of service total, 3 years of active duty, and 3 years of reserve duty for the U.S. Army. I was an enlisted man, and I was a volunteer. I wasn't drafted. Subsequent to getting out of the military, I went back and I did a bachelor's degree in business. I started a business. I lost my shirt, and I lost a few other people's shirts as well. A lot of people's shirts. Any small business people out here that have ever tried to go into business and it just didn't work out? That happens a lot, right? And so, having done that, I went back into corporate America, and I worked in high finance. We managed billion-dollar budgets for an 85,000 employee company that ultimately reduced headcount down to about 48,000 employees. That was in the telecommunications industry. And the telecommunications industry did the same thing that the forestry industry did. It used technology to improve its process and reduce the number of employees. So the reduction in forestry is more about the technology improvements, just like it was in telecom. In 2001, I had some car accident issues I had to deal with. I had a broken arm. And so ultimately, I ended up going back to law school. And I went back to law school in 2005. I graduated in 2009. I finally got the go-ahead on some of the disability accommodations I needed in 2011, taking 2 years to argue to get that. And finally, I passed the bar in 2013. Here's the problem. I moved up to Washington State in 2011, and to take care of my mother, who was at that time 80 years old and needing a place to live. So she lives in my house. And so I'm not moving back to California, but I am proud to say that I have the skills to read and write law and understand what that's all about. So my values are about caring for people. And in fact, when I ran in 2015 and 2016, my purpose, the why I'm running, is about trying to help as many people as I possibly can. And I think I can do that best with my skills and my education and experience in the congressional seat. And God knows we need it, especially now with 45. So this time around, this is my second time in the rodeo. I've done this before, and I've learned a lot. And I know I have a lot more to learn, but I can tell you this time is for real. This time I am working probably twice as hard as I did in the 2015-2016 cycle, and will continue to do that. And my hope is to represent you, because I suspect a lot of you are struggling. And here's what I know. I know that the federal government in the last 2 months has been making moves to take away the protections that we so rely on. They want to take our EPA away by reducing its funding. They want to take away some of the education funding to the Department of Education and reduce the amount of funding that comes down to the local level. They want to take away from health care, and they want to take away from Medicare, Medicaid, and also from Social Security. And these are all things that we rely on as our safety net. Now, I'm strong, and I'm a fighter, and I'm not giving up just because Trump wants to run roughshod or have Paul Ryan or even Jamie Herrera Butler take away some of these protections that we rely on. In January, we filmed the last live town hall that Jamie held. That was in Vancouver on the 17th of January, just before the inauguration. And she made it very clear that her 2010 objective was to repeal Obamacare. She changed her vote just a couple of weeks ago. She said she would not vote on it, but be careful of her words. She said, "My objection is about the loss of Medicaid funding for children." Okay?
Yeah, right.
Now, let me make this really clear so everybody gets it, right? Because I got it right away. 62% of senior citizens living in nursing homes rely on Medicaid funding, and they want to cut Medicaid funding by $880 billion, right? Where are those 62% of the people in nursing homes going to go live? What if they don't have any surviving relatives? Are they out on the street again? Right? Let's talk about college-age kids and high school kids for just a second. I spoke with a woman that talked about her education. She went and got a bachelor's degree, got married, she has a small child. And she decided to go back and do a master's degree on an online university. But then her marriage turned sour and it turned into a domestic violence situation, so she had to get out. Couple that with her parents getting sick and losing their jobs. So they all moved in and lived together. And she was saying that her payments due for Her student loans were crippling her. She could hardly pay rent. It was an awful situation for her. And you know that it's coming down the pike, worse for maybe some more of us. And I can say in the state of Washington, and Brian, I'm going to ask you to take some action on this one. In the state of Washington, so there was a misunderstanding about something that got brought up earlier, and that is that Frank brought up the idea that Medicare is not allowed to negotiate drug prices. This is a minor point. That law was put in place when George Bush authorized Part D for medicines. What Obamacare didn't do is it didn't take that off the books. So we have a law that protects the pharmaceutical companies and gives them carte blanche to charge whatever they want for drugs and pharmaceuticals, right? In the state of Washington, when it comes to rent that you might pay if you're a renter and you have an apartment, there is a law on the books that prohibits cities and counties from having rent control. Now, I want to be really clear, okay? I'm not an advocate for rent control. It has its own problems. It causes prevention of developers from wanting to come in and develop new low-cost housing. So that part of it, I think we need to be careful about. But the law on the books that gives landowners or landlords the right to come in and raise the rent whatever they want, 30%, 50%, sometimes more, as many times as they want every year, that law, Brian, please, let's work on getting that law off the books like I need to do for Congress to get the law off the books because the pharmaceutical companies have so we have our work to do. And it's important work because, again, going back to it, I want to help as many people as I possibly can. The best way for me to do that is in the congressional sitting. And my campaign slogan is people first before profits. We all deserve to have a fair lifestyle. And unlike the rest of my colleagues here, I'm actually running for office. And campaigns are expensive, so I have to tell you that I have to rely on you. I have to rely on you for contributions. I have to rely on you for volunteer time. I have to rely on you for endorsements. And if you want to make a contribution, I'm trying to encourage people, small contributions, $5 a month, or $10 a month, or $20 a month, something modest, but something that is maybe a little bit more affordable than otherwise. And I've got some signs over here. Most of you have gotten my business cards. If you haven't, please see me and I'll get one to you. And I want to thank you all for your time this evening. And if any of you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain those.